3i is the third interstellar object discovered in human history. When it passed its perihelion on 29th October 2025, it displayed astonishingly abnormal phenomena and rapid changes in brightness. Since entering the inner solar system, this mysterious visitor has gone through dramatic observational challenges, groundbreaking scientific discoveries, and ongoing debates about its true nature. Welcome to 10 O'Clock Mysteries. Hello everyone, I'm Air. This episode, you've won. We're here to give you an update on 3EY. Welcome everyone, it's 10 o'clock again. Hello, I'm Air and welcome to 10 O'Clock Mysteries. This episode is absolutely a topic that you've all been asking for. After trying it out, because in other episodes I've seen a lot of comments where people keep telling me talk about it again, talk about it again, talk about it again. Also on the Patreon platform, some members have complained, hey, people overseas update every day, why don't we talk about it here in Hong Kong? Actually, I do update, but not every single day. In the members area, I've actually been talking about this topic all along. So last week we finally had our first voting post where everyone could choose the topic for the next episode. What should we talk about? And this interstellar visitor, 3EY, was the clear winner. So today we're going to explore the astronomical event that's attracted the most attention in recent years, the celestial body known as 3EY. Since its discovery on July 1st, right up to now, November 2025, it has undergone many dramatic changes. Recently, it's even been involved in... There have been those unusual radio signals, some abnormal jets, and in the scientific community, two very heavyweight figures have weighed in. First, there's that Harvard professor, Loeb, and then there's Michio Kaku, the Japanese-American physicist from the City University of New York. The two of them have even had a sort of long-distance debate about this. This incident hasn't just challenged our understanding of 3E, it's also touched on deeper questions. Are we truly alone in the universe? So, is there really an alien spacecraft? Are we truly not alone? So today, what we'll do is use a timeline approach to track the changes of this celestial object. We'll start from its perihelion and then update day by day, so it's easier for you all to keep up. That is, ever since its perihelion, after it hid behind the sun and then reappeared, we'll follow its journey right up to today, which, as I'm making this video, is the 11th of November, bringing us to the very latest developments. At this point in time, is there any major update about this 3I? During this process, I'll also incorporate Loeb's latest insights. Afterwards, I'll delve deeper into Michio Kaku's arguments, particularly how he and Loeb have had a sort of remote debate due to their differing opinions. Alright, before we officially talk about the updates, I'd like to briefly introduce what 3I is, because some people might have just joined and may not have noticed this 3I before. So what exactly is this thing? If you want to know more details, you can check out my previous video where I already introduced it. That video covered how it was discovered by a telescope in Chile, and up until the time we made that episode, we'd already talked about all its movements. Alright, so this 3INS also has an official name, which is C2025N1 Agnes. What's special about it is that it doesn't belong to our solar system. Yes, it's not from our sun. It's an object from outside that has entered our solar system, okay? After it was discovered in early July, it started to show a lot of very unusual characteristics. For example, its brightness increased extremely quickly, its trajectory shifted, and there were many things like the precision of its path and the rate of deviation. Many of these aspects far exceeded what would naturally or normally be expected. That's why it's been described as It's a non-natural object, and recently some very complex jets have been discovered. At first, scientists thought it was just an ordinary comet, but as observations went deeper, controversy arose. Some people, including Loeb, believe that it could be an object of non-natural origin, while others, like Michio Kaku, whom we'll talk about now, tend to believe that this can be explained naturally as a celestial body. This event has already become a global focus, even with NASA releasing data about it. They are all involved in this. Alright, let's use a timeline to sort out all these changes. We'll start from the previous 21st of October, which was the day it entered the phase behind the Sun. Let's take a look step by step at how it evolved. The first update was between the 21st and 30th of October. During this period, 2I/Borisov reached the position of solar conjunction. From Earth's perspective, its position was behind the Sun. It was directly behind the Sun, and the angular separation was only 0.9 degrees. Optical telescopes on Earth were completely ineffective because the Sun's light was far too strong, resulting in a period of darkness for observing it. However, scientists certainly didn't give up. They switched to using spacecraft to continue monitoring it, including the Seacor-1 instrument on NASA's GOES-19 satellite, as well as the Stereo-A and ESA SOHO satellites to observe it. These instruments were originally intended for Instruments originally used to monitor the Sun's corona unexpectedly became crucial tools for tracking this Free-Eye Agnes. Then, on the 24th of October, the Meerkat radio telescope at the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory detected, at frequencies of 1.665 and 1.667 GHz, an absorption line from a hydroxyl OH molecule coming from Free-Eye Agnes. This was the first time in human history that such a detection had been made. The radio signals from this celestial body marked a breakthrough in multi-wavelength astronomical observation. These frequencies correspond to the natural resonance of the OH molecule, which proves that there is a large amount of OH molecules around Free-Eye Agnes originating from water molecules broken down by cosmic rays. So this discovery supports the natural origin of Free-Eye Agnes, but actually, in an interview with the journal, Avery admitted that although there is this OH signal, he emphasised that apart from the OH absorption signal, there have not yet been any other radio detections. This suggests that there could be even more unknown substances. In recent days, Avery's often been discussing his views, and he repeatedly stresses one thing, that science is about boldly making assumptions even if something only has a single piece of evidence. Even if there's only a 1% chance, we still have to consider that possibility. The reason is that he believes as long as there's even a 1% chance, we have to include it, because that's how science boldly explores the unknown. Alright, moving on, let's continue. So, between the 27th and the 30th of October, Free-Eye Agnes suddenly showed a rapid increase in brightness. It suddenly became much brighter, and it also accelerated abnormally. This incident was also reported in Flex. Many channels in a world of mysticism and on YouTube have said that this absolutely proves it's a spaceship and so on, but is it really? Let's keep paying attention and see. Next, there are two more people, one called Zhang Chipin and another called Kawatums. They published a study in Isles showing that the increase in brightness of Free-Eye Agnes is inversely proportional to the distance from the Sun to the power of 7.5. This is far beyond the normal 2 or 3 times power seen in typical brightness changes. The ratio is at least double, and they said this data indicates that the activity is unusually intense. At the same time, a staff member from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, named definitely for Nokia, along with everyone else, analysed it and found that the brightness had shifted by 4 arcseconds in right ascension. Statistically, this is extremely significant by every measure. Around perihelion, the object lost about 1/6 of its total mass, which is equivalent to several billion tons. As for the material, it was ejected out, and in the latest updates during this period, it was pointed out in the New York Post that after the object swung past the Sun, it revealed even more hints of an extraterrestrial origin. In particular, the mass loss and the shift might not be something that can be produced by natural causes alone. Then, from the 29th to the 30th of October, after the object reached perihelion, its distance from the Sun was 1.36 astronomical units, and the wind speed reached 68 km per second. That's equivalent to a speed of 245,000 km per hour. At this point, the apparent magnitude of the object was about 9, and it showed a distinct blue colour, an even more vivid hint than the Sun itself. There was a large amount of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide continuously escaping from the object at this stage. The object was almost completely obscured by the Sun, but the high wind speed left scientists. Scientists were extremely concerned about this. In every new interview, they updated their findings. One of them pointed out that the jets from the object might actually be coming from some kind of propulsion system because the speed of the gases was astonishingly high. This suggests there could be some kind of intelligent guidance involved. Although he emphasised that the most likely explanation is still a natural one, he didn't rule out other possibilities. For example, as I mentioned earlier, even if there's only a 1% chance, he would still count it as a possibility and was bold enough to say so. Alright, then we move on to November, specifically November 1st. So during the period from the 1st to the 4th of November, the object finally reappeared. Visual observation was finally restored, meaning it had finally emerged from behind the sun and we could observe it again. In the early hours of November 1st, astronomers used the Loeb Observatory's Discovery telescope to capture the first optical image of the object after its perihelion. At that time, the object was 16 degrees from the sun and 5 degrees above the horizon. Afterwards, they used a small reflecting telescope to further verify it, and this image was then uploaded to a website dedicated to observations of this object. At the same time, they noticed that this free-eye Adnus was showing changes in colour, and this was actually the third time its colour had changed. When it was first discovered in July, free-eye Alice appeared red. By September, during the period we mentioned earlier, V-eye Alice, if you remember that image, it had turned green. Now, in early November, it has already taken on a pale blue appearance. However, the latest analysis suggests that these changes might be due to shifts in the ratio of gases and dust rather than an actual change in its true colour. In this stage's update, reported by Life Science, they responded to the view that this object has not yet exploded. They emphasised that although V Alice is still very much intact, its unusual behaviour, such as the changes and shifts in colour, cannot be ignored. They believe that this kind of change could possibly be the result of some sort of alien probe. Then, on the 5th of November, the China National Space Administration announced that Tianwen-1's orbiter had used a high-resolution camera to observe this free eye. They said the distance was about 30 million kilometres, making it the closest observation point at the time. The images clearly showed both the comet's nucleus and its tail, and this independent visual data is extremely important for understanding the properties of the material. This was also reported by the Times of Israel. In the article, they updated to warn the world not to ignore this comet, as it could be a potential extraterrestrial threat, especially since the new images show structures that might be linked to even more abnormal states. Between the 8th and 9th of November, there was a very significant discovery. Free-eye Agnes detected the appearance of 7 jet structures. This discovery is absolutely revolutionary. There were 2 people involved, one called Frank Liebin and the other called Michael Bischler. Using the telescope's long exposure method, they found at least 7 unique jets, including 2 anti-tail jets pointing towards the sun. The length is astonishing. One is as long as 9.5 million kilometres. Another main jet points in the opposite direction and is even more impressive, stretching 2.85 million kilometres. The scale of these jets is 10 times the distance between Jupiter and the Sun, making this an absolutely unprecedented discovery. This anti-tail jet goes against what we would normally expect in physics, because its density is 1,000,000 times higher than that of the solar wind. This suggests that the core diameter is over 5 kilometres, possibly 10 kilometres or even larger. The total mass exceeds 50 billion tonnes. Loeb analysed these images and updated his findings in a YouTube video, where he pointed out that these new images show the anti-tail, highlighting that the jets could actually be some kind of propulsion system. He further added on News Nation that the speed of this gas raises concerns about the possibility of intelligent guidance, because although he believes that from a natural perspective the chances are high, he feels that this kind of anomaly might not be something that can be produced naturally. At the same time, on Eston Wage, a blog post responding to and explaining this anomaly insisted that such statistical anomalies need to be taken seriously and thoroughly examined. Alright, moving on to 10th to 11th November, which is very recent, right around the time of this episode, the Virtual Telescope project there. They captured some beautiful ion structures. They did this 14 times, with each exposure lasting 120 seconds. Then they took these 14 images, each with a 120-second exposure, and stacked and processed them together to create a highly detailed astronomical image. If you've studied astrophotography, like taking pictures of nebula and such, this is the same kind of system they use. Long exposures, then stacking lots of long exposure shots together, combining all that data to enhance the final image. By combining all those extremely fine details that are hard to capture, it becomes a highly detailed astronomical image. In this detailed image, it shows that the tail is even clearer than in earlier observations. The current brightness is between 9.8 and 14.67, which is at this particular distance. With a 20 centimetre telescope, you can see it. Then, on the 11th of November, which is my most recent update, the comet officially reappeared in the eastern sky, located in Virgo near Venus's Pholo. That's where it is. In the article update, it called on the government to shut down after the conclusion, right? NASA released a high-resolution image from the MRO 40 days ago, emphasising that these images are 3 times better than those taken by the Hubble telescope. These images might reveal even more truths and information. In an interview with IB Times, he hinted that Kaku's comments were just an attempt to win public favour. He didn't write any scientific papers to support it. His claims are just his own, based on some data, and then he just talks in front of the camera, going on and on like that, right? It's just to make people like him. At the same time, in a report by USA Today, he discussed that this comet might be connected to another newly discovered comet called C2025 V1 Borisov, hinting that if this comet is indeed linked to the new one, it could reveal the possibility of an even larger scale event. Actions or changes, right? So through these timelines we can see this 3i Agnes, yeah? From the dark period behind the Sun to its rapid approach to perihelion, it has re-emerged, along with the discovery of these complex jets. The changes at each stage are quite dramatic. Each phase brings new discoveries. Basically, if you've been paying attention, if you've been following it yourself, every single day this 3i Agnes seems to have some new point for you to take in. Suddenly it's like, oh, there's something new about it. Suddenly its tail disappeared, and then suddenly it brightened up again. Why did its tail disappear? Because it broke apart, losing a huge amount of material, and that material formed 7 jets. Some of these jets were actually pointing towards the Sun, which scientists found very strange. They said that the tail should be pushed by the Sun's, solar wind or whatever, and the force should always push it away from the Sun, so it should always have a certain direction. But surprisingly, in this case, 2 of the jets were actually pointing towards the Sun, and what's more, they were at those astonishing distances of 950,000 kilometres and 2.85 million kilometres. These are revolutionary, unprecedented, massive jets. All these things together made for a rather dramatic development. During this process of updates, every time, of course, in all the major media, he became quite the centre of attention. With every update, he kept emphasising these unusual characteristics, and he often hinted that people shouldn't roll out that 1%. In other words, he kept mentioning that 1%, meaning you shouldn't dismiss the possibility of a non-natural origin. Although he still admitted that the most likely explanation was natural, he urged the public to keep an open mind and not to ignore this data. Right, so after talking for so long about this Farrier guy, let's now move on to Michio Kaku's arguments, as well as his remote debate or perhaps criticism of Avi Loeb. Well, it's not quite like that, so listen for yourselves and make your own judgment, alright? So, as for Kaku, from the 8th to the 11th of November, he appeared on the Newspoms programme, where he put forward a theory called the 7 billion year rubbish collector. I've listened to this theory myself, and I think it's quite good. So I'll try to present his theory here in full for everyone, and also share his views on Avi as completely as possible here. So that everyone can understand, this is what he said. In his view, this could be a very ancient celestial body. This Rusheng object might already have a history of 7 billion years. Over this long span of 7 billion years, it would have had enough time to accumulate all sorts of materials. For example, this could explain why its lithium content is unusually high and why its chemical composition is different from what you'd expect from a typical Rusheng object. He believes that over these 7 billion years, it has had enough time for this to happen. Time to accumulate these gaseous elements and all sorts of different environmental materials, and I think this explains many of the mysteries surrounding Rusheng. So what makes this suspected 7 billion year old Rusheng object so unique? It's because, unlike the Rusheng objects inside our Sun, which are often only 3 or 4 billion years old at most, this one stands out. And this free NIS has another feature. It contains this lithium ion component, which is different from what you'd find in ordinary Rusheng objects. So at the moment, we're still waiting for NASA to release the latest images of this Rushang object. And this week, we've also seen some members of the House of Representatives saying that the images will only be made public once the government resumes operations. What do you think this means? Is NASA hiding something? It sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? I mean, what's the harm in releasing an image? After all, it's just a piece of paper, not some top secret document that needs to be locked away in a safe. It's just a piece of paper. So what are they so afraid to reveal? Why are they so unwilling to do it? If they make the information they have public, it'll only lead to even more speculation, and to some extent, it might just make things more troublesome. The host then continued, saying, "We've been tracking this Free Eye Agnes for several months now, and we're monitoring some of their very unusual and suspicious behaviour. What we're facing here might not just be some ancient object, but there's a real possibility that it could actually be an alien spacecraft. How likely do you think that is?" So Michio Kaku responded, "I think the probability isn't zero, but it's extremely low. At the moment, it looks like it's just normal comet behaviour. Apart from the few unusual aspects where it does seem quite special, everything else suggests it's just an ordinary comet. So I don't think there's any need to hide the truth or keep the American public in the dark. They have a right to know." The host then asked Kaku again, mentioning the Harvard professor. He thinks that this Free Eye ad might be getting ready to warm up and activate. What do you think about this idea? So Kaku answered again, saying that yes, it is possible, but we have to consider the probability distribution of all these different guesses. Every time, he was especially careful to emphasise that the likelihood of his hypothesis being correct is extremely low. Therefore, we have to look at this objectively. These are just speculations and can't be treated as fact. We should work together with the International Asteroid Warning Network for the sake of Earth. We need to be prepared for potential threats from outer space. So the host asked again, saying, "According to what we know, when this celestial body comes closest, it will be only 167 million miles from Earth. And when would that be? On December 19th, which is just a few weeks away from now. Is there anything we should be worried about?" So Kaku answered, saying, "Personally, I don't think there's any need to worry. I believe this Free INS is still quite far from Earth, so there won't be any alien invasion, and there's certainly no danger." Then the host asked again, saying, "Yes, Professor Avery has always been at the forefront of theoretical research. He speculates that this is an extraterrestrial object, or that this Free Eye Agnes is actually a reconnaissance aircraft. That is, it's just for investigation purposes. We want to know, what would you like to say to him? How do you view his theory?" So Kaku answered again. He said, "Speculation's fine, but you must clearly state how confident you are in this speculation. Is it 100% or just a certain percentage? Otherwise, it could cause public panic. People just want to know the truth. Because if it turns out to be a false alarm afterwards, there will be a huge backlash, and everyone will say that we so-called experts are just talking nonsense. There's no danger here, just scaremongering and chasing after attention. So when you mention danger, I think it's necessary to clearly state how credible this prediction actually is." Alright, the host then asked Kaku again, saying, "I know you previously warned that this free ends when it orbits around the sun, it gains some extra energy. This suggests obviously that there's some kind of intelligent guidance. Is there any sign that it's really being guided by intelligence?" And then Kaku answered him again. "So far there's nothing, but there are some speculations suggesting that it seems to have made some slight acceleration while in motion, orbiting around the sun. This is indeed a cause for concern. I mean, as mentioned in the quote, if intelligent life exists, then when it orbits the sun, it should accelerate. But we haven't seen any intelligent life. However, it has indeed accelerated. This involves several possible reasons. For example, it could be due to outgassing. It's also possible that a part of it broke off, or that the release of gas from outgassing could explain the change in speed, or it suddenly sped up. So this can't be taken as definitive proof. It's just one of the points we use as a reference to speculate about the possible existence of intelligent life, but this is by no means a conclusion yet. Alright, the host then continued to ask, "That's right, so what will you be observing next? What would be the most crucial evidence?" And then Loeb answered, "What could serve as irrefutable proof? Well, unless it's like those Hollywood films, a spaceship lands and then some beings come out, or like A.T. from Home, that sort of thing would be enough to count as solid evidence. Then the host asked again, "So, regarding its trajectory, have you noticed any more scientific evidence?" And Loeb replied, "Well, if it tried to communicate with us, for example, using Morse code or some language we understand to reach out to us, or some kind of mathematical signal perhaps, that would allow us to draw even more concrete conclusions rather than just hearing some vague radio signals. If we directly receive knowledge shared by an alien civilization, then we could be 100% certain." So from this segment of the program, we can see that Michio Kaku tends to be more rational, emphasizing that the probability of extraterrestrial intelligence is quite low and that there's no need to worry about alien invasions. But at the same time, Kaku is critical of this He speculates that there is a lack of quantification, which easily causes panic and steers public opinion. He is also very dissatisfied with NASA for concealing this information, believing that such actions only serve to fuel further speculation about the causes. Alright, to sum up, the free INS incident demonstrates the complexity of changes in astronomical phenomena through a timeline. We also use this method, watching its changes as they happen, which I actually find quite interesting, as I've never studied this before. The reason I'm watching this is because I don't really know much about it, but actually, by making this episode, I have to thank you all for pushing me to learn about these things. Watching new points emerge day by day, I personally find it quite interesting. Now, the mainstream scientific community believes that it's just a natural phenomenon. The supporting evidence includes the OH signal, the carbon dioxide spectrum, and some regularities in the jets. But Everly Lowe continues to insist that we should keep an open mind, and he also pointed out those 10 items that still need to be addressed. Some situations that need to be explained, and this debate between Kaku and Everly Lowe actually represents the complementary nature of the scientific method. One's more conservative, the other rather progressive. I think both perspectives should exist, otherwise it's hard to make progress. No matter what the outcome is, 19th December is when 3i will be closest to Earth, and at that moment it will be the most decisive time. This whole thing reminds us that the universe is full of possibilities. There are so many unknown things out there, and scientific progress relies on both openness and caution working together to complement each other and push our knowledge forward. I don't know what you think, but personally, I tend to believe that this is just a perfectly natural interstellar object. After all, people tend to come up with all sorts of reasons to comfort themselves when faced with the unknown. For example, we've never seen the far side of the moon, and then you hear all sorts of stories and rumours about it. When these legends appear, I always have a simple response. If no one has ever been there, how can you possibly know what's happening there? Do you get what I mean? Also, lately, I really can't stand some of these so-called star people. Actually, there's something I want to read out to everyone about this free in this. For example, there's someone who claims they can simulate the messages from the free eye and send them to people on Earth. I find this whole thing hilarious, honestly, I really do. There's also someone who claims to be the mother of the universe, and she calls herself the Cursed Mother for sure. She believes that this celestial body is here to visit her, or that it's something she arranged herself. Well, that's just how it is, isn't it? I want to talk about mysticism, but I don't want to make things too mysterious. Alright, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you want to see the next episode, please subscribe. You're welcome to leave a comment and discuss with me. I'm both a living person and a welfare recipient, and you can also go to the YouTube description box to become a patron member. For the free membership, most posts are now viewable, except for the ad-free videos of the 10 Mysteries program, which require a membership. I've also lowered the membership price, basically to about the same as a cup of milk tea, so I hope everyone will support this channel more. So for the next episode, there won't be a vote. In the next episode, I'll talk in great detail about the Illuminati. See you next time.